Good morning. This is a broadcast from the Justice for Ezugo Family campaign. This is part 2 of the Dynamite revelation video. My battery ran out while I was recording it, hence I have to record it in the second part, continuing the first part. Please watch the first part first before you watch this video, because this is a continuation of part 1, and you will find the video and the other very useful and revealing documents, including court documents and other official verified and verifiable evidence, and there are mountains of them at our profile at Ezugo Children, at Ezugo Children on Twitter. I'll spell that. Ezugo Children is written on my cap, E-Z-E-U-G-O, Children, Ezugo Children. And another profile, the other profile is at Kingsley Ezugo, K-I-N-S-L-E-Y, Ezugo, E-Z-E-U-G-O. But in case you have not yet watched part 2, if you have not watched the first part yet, in that video I summed up why I decided to begin this unprecedented and undoubtedly public interest campaign that we called Justice for Ezugo Family. And then I set out the objectives of the campaign, being the 3 decades of what every senior and appellant judges and lawyers found to be truly unprecedented and extreme and the worst kind of crimes by the establishment, and I mean the British establishment, against the Ezugo family, which continue to this day, including the destruction of the Ezugo family, the abduction, the sexual abuse, the attempted murder of the Ezugo children, the attempted murder of my wife, the kidnapping, hostage taking, and the extreme torture and the soliciting and attempted assassination on me. And then we talked about, and we are talking here about an unprecedented events, what is truly an appalling case, a case that clearly stands out because this is a case which clearly anyone will call Britain's worst scandal. And this scandal has been ongoing for 3 decades and is still going on till this day. We are talking the collusion of the Judiciary UK, the Ministry of Justice UK, and the Metropolitan Police UK, and their proxies, and in truly heinous, abominable, and alarming and the most disturbing crimes that are stranger than fiction, including the, as I said earlier on, the abduction, the sexual abuse, and attempted murder of my children, the attempted murder of my wife, and the kidnapping and the torture and attempted murder and attempted assassinations on me. And these are matters that are of most considerable public importance and public interest. And these crimes were all organized, directed, and led by Brian Leveson. Brian Leveson, the third most senior judge, the head of criminal justice in England and Wales, the president of the King's Bench Division, the author of Art Leveson Inquiry. This is a man with a lot of power. This is a man at the heart of Judiciary UK, the third most senior judge that, according to stories, nearly made it to the Chief Justice, position of the Chief Justice. But this is the man involved in egregious crimes. And there are hundreds of crimes, and the evidence shows that he is the ringleader, the man at the top of the chain of these heinous and abominable crimes. And there are, as I see you will find in the first video, we have mountains of undisputed, indisputable, iron-cast evidence to prove these crimes and to prove that Brian Leveson is actually the main perpetrator of these heinous crimes and the cover-up. And then we have the ongoing cover-up now by the current president of the King's Bench, Victoria Sharp. And all these things are happening under the watchful eye and perhaps the direction of the current Chief Justice, Mrs. Carr. And you will see in part 1, when you go to our profile, you will also be able to access the judicial correspondences, including correspondences to Mrs. Carr, the Chief Justice, the presidents of the Court of Appeal Civil Division, Vox, and the Vice President Underhill. Vox is also the master of roles. So all the senior, I'm sorry, I have a cold, very terrible cold. So all the most senior members of the Judiciary UK knew about these crimes. They knew about the perpetrators of these crimes. But what we have is nepotism. What we have is the same cancer that has infested at Judiciary UK for hundreds of years. And they remain inherent in their ways, that they put a ring of steel around the rotten judges, pervert judges involved in the most heinous and abominable crimes. They shield them from any accountability. They shield them from prosecution and from judicial investigation. They promote them. They celebrate them. And these are judges, as you will see from the Ezugo family, judges who committed very serious, extremely serious crimes. And Brian Leveson, the third most senior judge, is at the head of these crimes. And before the part 1 video prematurely ended, I was talking about what happened, how Brian Leveson and the so-called Mr. Justice Foskett and their gang, who are also my opponents, including the Minister of Justice and the Commissioner of Police, then Cressida Dick, how they conspire in using rogue doctors at Barnett Enfield Haringey Trust, in kidnapping me, torturing me, and held me hostage for 3 long years at Chase Farm Hospital in Enfield, despite clearly knowing and express themselves in writing And as I said, and you will find from the evidence before you in part one video and on our profile, I have tons of covert recordings of what happened to me at Chase Farm Hospital, Enfield. I bugged the meeting rooms of these rogue doctors, so I heard everything that they said. They confirm that what their directions were to kidnap me, held me in a mental institution, knowing full well that I suffer absolutely no mental illness, just to keep me from the public eye, because the evidence in this case is extremely damaging to Brian Leveson, to the Judiciary UK, to the Met Police, and the Ministry of Justice. It's evidence that they said will destroy the trust if anyone were to find out that what happened to me, because they knew they were directed to murder me, and they were going to murder me, which was why, as you will hear in part one, they were injecting me with obnoxious substances that was causing me heart attack and muscle paralysis as they continuously wanted to stop my heart, and that's the way they wanted to assassinate me. They subjected me to most extreme torture for 3 of the longest years of my life. So I wanted to hold these individuals and their puppet masters accountable to ensure that they could never do this again to anybody. Because if you let them get away with it, they will do it to you and your loved ones. They will do it to other members of the public, and we cannot allow them to do that. No one could suffer what I suffered in the hands of these monsters, and came out with the evidence, the unprecedented level of evidence that I came out with, and not be minded to do something about it to ensure that these monsters are put away. These are the most vile criminals. These so-called judges, Brian Leveson, this so-called Mr. Justice Foskett, the so-called Mr. Justice Openshaw, who are engaged in this clearly evident criminal conspiracy to deliberately kidnapping me from inside the Royal Court of Justice on the 19th of December 2018 and locked me up, held me hostage for 4 long years, 1 year in prison, the other of 3 years in at Chelmsford, Chase Farm Hospital, Enfield. For 3 long years, tortured and attempted to murder me, because they could not challenge the evidence, because they could not silence me, because they could not undermine me. They could not stop me from, they are trying to, as they said, the rogue doctor said, the evidence is so damaging that they simply cannot allow me to come out, because I will expose what happened to me. And they know, the members of the public, will take action and ensure that they are held accountable. So they were given the instruction to murder me instead. And as you will see from the evidence yourself, but for the great people, good human beings, the staff at the hospital who stood up and said, no, they are not going to be part of a murder. They said they're not going to be part of a cover-up a murder. And they demanded that I must be released. And they exposed these abusers of my children, these child rapists who kidnapped my children, sexually abused my children, and attempted to murder my children, who want to cover up their crimes by murdering me to silence the truth coming out. They stood up to Brian Leveson and said, no, we are not going to be part of this murder. And they exposed him. One of the agencies they contacted was the United Nations agency to raise my case about what was happening. So they couldn't, they know that the story has come out. Somebody now knew what was going on. So that's the only reason why I'm alive today. If they hadn't been exposed at the highest level, they would have murdered me. So you have to make sure that they do not do this to you, your family, or to any other members of the public. They are not above the law. Brian Leveson is subject to the law as anybody else. No judge is above law. And this campaign is determined to hold them accountable. All those involved, including Brian Leveson, accountable. And with your help, we can do that. So when they kidnapped me, and then they held me for 3 long years and tortured me. And I mentioned and I mentioned to you earlier on, and I will say it again, I have tons of covert recordings of these rogue doctors, as you will find in the legal bundle in tab 2. You will see there are still so many of the recordings. There are tons of it that I haven't disclosed all of them. But you can see from the lot that I have disclosed, there is no question whatsoever of what went on. You can read the medical records. You can read the independent psychiatric report. Every single one of them, including the ones by these rogue doctors, some of these rogue doctors, some of them weren't rogue before, like Dr. Katan. He was forced to turn rogue after he has confirmed in a medical report that I have no mental illness. And he was confirmed in a medical report that he was going to discharge me from the hospital immediately. After he confirmed in so many covert recorded meetings that I had with him, my solicitor, and his team, that I have no mental illness. And he confirmed that he knew that the people that brought me in the hospital knew that I suffered absolutely no mental illness when they brought me to hospital. So my detention in hospital had nothing to do with a mental illness. It was simply these guys tried to murder me in prison. One of the prisoners that they recruited to murder me, having found out who I was, couldn't bring himself to murder someone like me who is a campaigner for justice, someone like me who is fighting to rescue my children from the monsters that abducted my children, abused them, and attempted to murder them. He couldn't bring himself to be an agent of a child abuser like Brian Leveson and the so-called Mr. Justice Foskett and their gang. He couldn't bring himself to murder someone who was fighting to get his children away from these monsters. So he didn't do it. And he came to me and he told me what was going on. And the person, the main perpetrator, like everybody else mentioned, was Brian Leveson. And all this, as you will find, were recorded. So there could be no dispute about any of these events. So so not only that I have these covered recordings, I recorded the rogue doctors, all their meetings. So I know everything that they said. I know that they knew that I have no mental illness. And I knew what they were told to do to me because they discussed it among themselves without knowing that I was recording everything that they were saying. They discussed it in their meetings. Their objectives was to ensure, to perpetuate the abduction of my children, to ensure that I could never get my children back, to ensure that I could never walk the street, to expose what happened to me, to ensure that my children remained in the control of the people who abducted, sexually abused them, and attempted to murder them, to prevent my children from giving evidence against Brian Leveson and others who abducted, abused, and attempted to murder my children, my wife, and I, and all the other people who are involved in these crimes and the cover-up. That's what they were told. They discussed it. And all of them said they know I have no mental illness, but they cannot discharge me. Because as they said, and I told them every day, I will prosecute them once I get out. They will, because what these guys did is that these are extremely serious crimes. And they knew that they were committing extremely serious crime. They said it themselves. You will hear them talking about it. And they knew that if the public were to find out what was happening to me, that they are toast. They know they're going to go to prison for this if the public take action about what happened to me. And I urge you, the members of the public, to take action to ensure that they can never repeat this with somebody else, because no one deserves to be locked up in a mental institution to cover up the abduction and the sexual abuse and attempted murder of their children. No one deserves to do that. This is an absolutely every parent's worst nightmare. But everything that they did to me backfired. Not only that they did not succeed in assassinating me, I came out with mountains of evidence that will ensure that they are put away. And I urge you to help me ensure that in the public interest. So not only that I recorded them, not only that I have all these covered recordings of the rogue doctors and the staff, but I also have covered recordings of senior government lawyers, court officials, police officers, and other staff in that hospital. I also recorded the prisoners. I also recorded the prison guards who also told me about their attempt to assassinate me and their effort. Two of them, the good guys, who knew what was going to happen to me, what Brian Leveson and the so-called Mr. Justice Foskett, the Commissioner of Police, Cressida Dick, and the senior lawyers in the MOJ, in the government legal department, planned to do. They told me about it and how they've been trying to move me, but were obstructed from doing so by the totally inept prison governor, Sarah Palin, at Wormwood Scrub Prison. So that's what I went through. But as I said, and you will find out, I came out alive. And I can tell you these tales. Who knows how many other people are unable to come out alive and tell you these tales. And if you do not do anything about this, there will be other people who will not come alive, who will not be able to tell you what I'm telling you, who will not be able to show you the evidence that you are about to see. And you, the members of the public, have a duty. Just as I'm doing this to safeguard the members of the public. You have the duty to support me, because I need you to ensure that this succeeds. So as all of them confirmed, he was the third most senior judge, the head of criminal justice and the president of the King's Bench, the author of Leveson Inquiry, aka Brian Leveson, who were the ringleader of this joint enterprise. And it was them and the so-called Mr. Justice Foskett who directed these rogue doctors to kidnap me, hold me hostage, tortured me, and attempted to assassinate me. And you will see the mountains of evidence, not just the independent medical report and psychiatric report and notes by the nurses, all the nurses, the prison guards in hospital and in prison. By the way, I didn't go to prison because I committed any crime. You will see from the first part of this video what led to my wrongful imprisonment. I am a man who has never committed an offense in my life. I am a man who never suffered any mental illness in my life. Yet I ended up in prison, and I ended up in a mental institution. And this is the story that some black people go through in their lives. But the institution cannot be allowed to get away with this forever. There has to be a change. Everyone deserves to be treated fairly and justly. And no one has a right to shield people who committed these most egregious crimes. And as I said, and I'll repeat it, Brian Leveson must be held accountable for his crimes. The so-called Mr. Justice Truscott must be held accountable for his crimes. And his other gangs who are involved, the government lawyers, the police officers, including the former commissioner of police, Chris Dick, she must be held accountable for her crimes, for her involvement in these crimes, because none of them is above the law. So this evidence that we have, that I have gathered, would ensure that all these individuals cannot be allowed to get away with these crimes. As you will see, include from the evidence that you will hear in tab 2 about these covert recordings and what the nurses, the senior management, and the other staff, and even independent investigators like Ralph Hamaiza, who described my malicious imprisonment is hostage taking. That's the only way to describe it. Being held hostage in a Chest Farm Hospital Enfield for 3 long years. He described it as unprecedented and the most alarming case he has ever seen, as he described how everybody, not just one person, telling him that these guys deliberately locked up a man who has absolutely no mental illness in a mental institution. He said everybody, the senior management, all the nurses and staff, have contacted him to raise my case. And this is a man who say he has dealt with thousands and thousands of cases, but he's never seen anything like it. When it was so clear, so evidently, that these people deliberately, these are supposed to be doctors, they deliberately locked up a man, an innocent man who has committed no offense, a man of sound mind, locked up as a part of a criminal conspiracy, locked me up in a mental institution for 3 long years. All these individuals raised all these alarms, and yet they kept me for 3 long years. They never wanted to get me out. You will also hear the testimony from the great people at 7 Ward, where they kept me initially, who refused to be involved in injecting me with these poisons, substances that were causing me heart. They were using, trying to murder me with. They were causing me heart attacks and muscle paralysis. They refused to do it. And as you will hear, all the nurses, the managers, from the previous to the next, every single one of them said they have told these nurses, these so-called consultants, that I don't suffer any mental illness. There have never been a single evidence, not a shred of evidence of any mental illness. And all of them has been telling them to say, you must discharge this man, he shouldn't be here. You are damaging him by bringing him in such environment. But as you will hear others as well confirming the covert recording, after they spoke to these rogue doctors, it was then that they confirmed that these rogue doctors already knew that I have no mental illness even before they brought me there, which is why they appear not to be listening to them, raising this serious alarm, concerns about my presence in a mental institution. So these rogue doctors, my apologies. So these rogue doctors, you will hear them clearly told them that it wasn't them that actually kept me there, that it was Brian Leveson, the Commissioner of Police, the senior lawyers at the Ministry of Justice, the so-called Mr. Justice Truscott and his gang, who abducted, abused, and sexually abused and attempted to murder my son, who put them up to it. So it was simply these judges, so-called judges, that told them, just keep him in there. We don't want him to come out and tell people what's happening. because his campaign, and I had a very successful campaign before that was exposing them and fighting to remove them from office. That's why they put me there and unlawfully shut down my campaign. But the truth is out now. This campaign is going on. And all of them, as you will see from the correspondence, from the Chief Justice, everybody knew about this campaign. To the Prime Minister, everybody knew about it, knows about this campaign. Everybody knows about these crimes. The Prime Minister, former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, the current Prime Minister Keir Starmer, the former and the current Attorney General, the former and current Director of Public Prosecution, the former and current Justice Secretary, the current Home Affairs Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, all of them knew. The National Crimes Agency, because of the organized nature, and there is a terrorism element to these crimes. So this is a matter also for the National Crimes Agency. You will see my correspondence to them. They know about these crimes. The heads of the Crown Prosecution Service, North London, the former and the current Ed Beltrami, knows about these crimes. And all of them knows who committed these crimes. But there is a nepotism going on. Even the current MP, David, for my constituency in Hendon, David Pinto Donchiski, he knows about these crimes. He knows who committed these crimes. But you will see that all these people are connected. Search it yourself. I found it myself alarming. All of them are connected. There is something that connected all of these people, including Keir Starmer. So there is nepotism going on. That's why they are not taking any action, positive step, to ensure the immediate arrest and prosecution of Brian Leveson and all those involved in these crimes. And it's so sad when you recognize the number of innocent men locked up in British prisons. And some of them, and a large number of them, were put in prison by the current Prime Minister Keir Starmer when he was the DPP, and Brian Leveson and other child rapists, so-called judges. And yet, they committed heinous crimes, and there are hundreds of crimes. When you read about this most alarming case, there are hundreds of crimes over the 3-decade-long that this scandal has been ongoing. And yet these people are free. So while I was in locked up, held hostage at Chest Farm Hospital, Enfield, even their most senior doctor, Shamir, who was the Shamir Patel, who was the clinical director, he carried out other members of the public, other members of staff, and the senior management, just as they raised this issue with everybody, they also raised it with him. And he carried out 3 weeks of investigation, 3-week investigation. I had 2 meetings with him in June and then in July of 2020. and in June, so I believe it's 17th of June, both meetings, I recorded them. I covertly recorded them. So you will hear him in his own words in tab 2. And he told me on that meeting in June that he was going to carry out a very detailed investigation as to what brought me to prison, to mental institution. Having been receiving all these complaints from staff about my presence there. So we then arranged that he will come back after his investigation. And he said it took him 3 weeks. He investigator carried out, as he said, thorough investigation at Wombuscore prison, why these guys first held me hostage for 1 year. And he carried out a thorough investigation at Chase Farm Hospital, Enfield, where they held me hostage for 3 long years. And he confirmed vividly, in the clearest term possible, he did not see any scintilla of sign of a mental illness. He read all their notes, he read all their report, everything they had to say, but he couldn't see a single evidence, a shred of evidence that I had any mental illness. And that really alarmed him in prison and in mental hospital. So for 4 long years, this I was kept and held hostage. And there was not a single evidence, not a shred of evidence. And yet these guys kept me in a mental institution for 3 long years, tortured me. The sort of torture, as you will hear in the first part of this video, is not something that anybody should be put through. And I am dedicating myself, with your help, to ensure that we change this. There are many vulnerable people there who cannot afford to fight like me. There are many people there who will not survive what I survived. There are many people there who cannot think about getting the evidence. But I have all these things. So we have to change it. So he also confirmed, Shamir Patel, that the people who brought me, held me hostage, these rogue doctors, knew, they know clearly that I have no mental illness, because he hasn't found any. And in one of his letters to me, he wrote, he clearly, you can see he titled it Unlawful Detention, because he knew that I was unlawfully detained. But I wasn't just unlawfully detained. It was because it wasn't an error. I didn't end up in a mental institution as a result of error. But it was a criminal conspiracy. It was a crime. And people involved in these crimes must be punished for it. Because it's a very serious crime that it should never be allowed to happen. So he confirmed he has not seen any evidence whatsoever, whether in prison or at Chase Farm Hospital. And this is also the same when Teobello, one of the most senior managers, called Teobello, he also carried out investigation by himself. Again, the reason why he got involved was because the staff, again, were also raising the issue to him. They said, why is this man kept in here? And as the staff, you will hear the staff say, including one of the senior nurses, Navendra Apado, he said, every day, Kingsley, we write on our notes that you don't suffer any mental illness. We told them we haven't seen any evidence of a mental illness. And we tell them every day to discharge you, that you should not be in here. And this was repeated by others. All of other people say the same thing. They've been telling them. So when they spoke to Teobello, and then he carried out his investigation, he came up with the same conclusion. Not a single evidence of a mental illness. And that's why he went directly to the staff, to these so-called consultants, and demanded that they discharge me, that this will be a dynamite. If someone hears about what's happening, that they deliberately lock me up in a mental institution and injected me what they were injecting me, this will cause total disaster for them. But they didn't listen to him. Instead, they started a propaganda to blackmail him. That's what I found out that happened. The senior manager, the managing director, Steve Cook, and the CEO, Ginger Candola, anybody that stood up, they blackmailed them, they shut them down. That's what's happening in this Barnett Enfield Haringey NHS Mental Health Trust. It's an unfit organization. And I have my attempt, the first thing that I did was to issue a judicial review claim, because even you will see the evidence yourself. Even the General Medical Council, when I made a complaint to them, has found, they have confirmed that these guys deliberately, wrongly misdiagnosed me with a fake mental illness. But they forgot the criminal element of it to that. This was not a mistake. This is a criminal conspiracy. And I sent them tons and tons of these covert recordings. I sent them the independent medical records and the medical reports. So they know from the evidence that this is a criminal conspiracy organized and directed by Brian Leveson. And yet they took no action, because these rogue doctors pose a grave danger to the public. What they did to me showed that the trust is unfit for purpose. It has to be shut down, or the managers has to be removed. The management must be removed. I also complained to the CQC, because it's the CQC, the Keir Quality Commission, that has a duty to take action against the trust. Again, the CQC covered up. The General Medical Council that was supposed to struck off these rogue doctors, they are engaged, they abuse the criminal practice to engage in kidnapping, hostage taking, and attempted murder. That's what they did. That's what the evidence clearly showed. They did. It's not, I'm not just making it up. That's evident. And yet, they haven't confirmed that they deliberately misdiagnosed me with a fake mental illness. And knowingly that they did that through criminal conspiracy. And knowing full well the clear and present danger that these rogue doctors pose to the general public, that they did so to cover up the sexual abuse and attempted murder of my children, and hundreds of other heinous and abominable crimes against my family. Instead of starting the disciplinary process and removing each and every one of the rogue doctors involved, they covered them up. Hence my judicial review. And this, since issuing this case, since lodging this case, I beg your pardon, on the 13th of May this year, the current president of the King's Bench, Victoria Sharp, has used a rogue judge, so-called Mr. Justice Swift, who is put in charge of the administrative court, which is really alarming, because when you read the history of this so-called Mr. Justice Swift, he was an advocate for the government. He was a former government lawyer who fought and covered up a lot of establishment crimes and shielded them. And yet he'd been appointed to head one of the most important departments of the justice system, the administrative court, which is supposed to hold the establishment accountable for wrongdoings. And every decision that he has made has shown that he's aligning himself with the government to cover up crimes. I want you to check it out. Check out the decisions that this so-called Mr. Justice Swift has been making. So a case like mine, that is so unprecedented and over and above anything else that has come before the court, as every senior and appellant judge confirmed, this is an unprecedented case that raises issue of considerable public importance, that exposes extremely serious crimes of unprecedented nature by the establishment against my family. And a case that they say that it is in the public interest that it must be heard. Not just because of the scale, the size of the case, the length of the case, but the importance of the case, but also the identity of the culprits in these crimes, including Brian Leveson, the former commissioner of police, And of course, the current Commissioner of Police is still part of the criminal conspiracy because he has not prosecuted the so-called police officers involved in the abduction and the sexual abuse of my children, an attempted murder of my children. Nor has he investigated or prosecuted any of these so-called police officers involved in these crimes. And as you will see from the evidence yourself, it was the commissioner's own lawyer, Stephen Morley, who told the Court of Appeal as far back as on the 9th of June 2010 that there has been hundreds of police officers involved in these 3-decade unprecedented crimes against my family. Just the case against the police alone, there are hundreds of police officers, including most senior officers involved in that crime. So you can see the scale of what I'm talking about. But in this case, we not only have the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, we have the Ministry of Justice. I have also won my case against the Ministry of Justice. But again, Victoria Sharp, just as Brian Leveson did when he was the president of the Queen's Bench, the current president, Victoria Sharp, has again obstructed any attempt to make the final order in that claim against the Ministry of Justice. The reference number of that claim is HQ18X04060. A case that I won since 2019, and yet the order confirming that still has not been made. That's what I face. And for 17 long years, the underlying claim have been obstructed from going to trial. A case that the senior and the and appellant judges, including the former president of the King's Bench, Anthony May, the predecessor of Brian Leveson, all of these judges say it's a case that raises issue of considerable public importance, an unprecedented case, and it is in the public interest to hear it, and that the trial should happen expeditiously. And for 17 years, the presidents of the King's Bench, the former Brian Leveson and the current Victoria Sharp, continue to obstruct that claim. A claim that's meant to safeguard the public from the sort of abuse that we have suffered, from sort of the crimes and destruction that the Ezugo family have suffered. They have prevented it from going ahead because the evidence, as they say, will cause considerable damage to Brian Leveson and all those involved in these crimes. So the criminals have to go free because their crime is so abominable that it will damage their reputation. Think about the logic in that. This is what's happening with the Judiciary UK. It's the most scandalous institution in this country. And it's supposed to be the one, the protector of human rights. It's supposed to be the enforcer of the law. This is a judiciary in a country that self-proclaims itself to be the cradle of justice. So you, the public, you need to know all this information and you need to act upon this information because you can't allow this to happen. You remember, they let Jimmy Savile walk free. They knew all the crimes that he committed, but still, he walked free. They knew. And remember also, Keir Starmer was the DPP during Jimmy Savile. It's happening again in this Ezugo family case. They're all shielding the abusers of my children. In this case, in fact, the evidence is more damaging than 100 Jimmy Saviles because of the involvement, the identity of the perpetrators of these crimes. The third most senior judge is involved in a criminal conspiracy in the abduction, the sexual abuse, and attempted murder of my children. The third most senior judge, Brian Leveson, is the ringleader in these crimes and hundreds of other crimes, including the attempted murder of my wife and the torture, the attempted murder, assassination of me, because they don't want people to hear about their crimes. They want to invade justice. They think they're above the law, that everybody else who commit crimes should be punished. And sometimes they lock up innocent people who committed no crimes. But they believe in their head somehow that they are above the law. And they did all these things thinking that they were going to get, they never expected. They're scratching their heads. How on earth I managed to come out and not get killed in prison or in a mental institutions? Because in prison they were exposed. They tried again in mental institution, they were exposed. And how on earth did, after, as you will read and find out yourself, they caused colossal destruction of evidence. My legal files, they destroyed it, they seized and destroyed it. They seized 30 of my camcorders and recording devices containing colossal amount of evidence. They seized over 300 hours of CCTVs. They did all these things. They thought they have gotten away with murder. But I have more than enough evidence still, despite all that, to ensure that any jury that hears this case have more than enough evidence to reach the decision that they are guilty of these crimes and put them in jail where they belong. These are Brian Leveson, the so-called Mr. Justice Foskett, the so-called Mr. Justice Openshaw, the Commissioner of Police, former Commissioner of Police, Cressida Dick, and these government lawyers involved in these crimes, and all the others. They are most vile criminals, and these most vile criminals belong in prison. So as I was saying, Phil Jackson, the head of nursing himself, also investigated the process that got me to a mental institution. And you will also hear Phil Jackson himself in the recordings of our meeting. And he confirmed, he knows that I suffer no mental illness. And he knows that everybody in there, including the so-called consultants who brought me there, knew that I suffer no mental illness. And he said he told them about this, and he told them to discharge me immediately. And he said that he's not only told them verbally, but he has put it in writing that everybody can say it. So it's on the system. He took these measures to remove himself completely for what is clearly a criminal conspiracy of that will have a very serious consequences. And he said you will hear him clearly in his own voice. He said that if my presence in this establishment, if the public knew, if this was ever to get out and people know what was happening here, that it will completely destroy the trust. The consequences will be considerable. That's the head of nursing, of the trust that held me hostage in a mental institution, tortured me, and attempted to assassinate me. So he wanted to remove himself from it, as any rational person would. So all of them understood. You will hear how they kept me in for these 3 years, never let me out. They locked me up in there with people, some people with very serious mental illness. This is not a place you keep any person of sound mind. But they did all this to me. Please watch part 1 of this video before you watch this part. But they didn't release me. They didn't discharge me. Because as you will hear from all these rogue doctors, including Brian Leveson, and let's not forget, the reason how I ended up in the mental institution was because when their attempt to assassinate me in prison was exposed, the Brian Leveson then used his friend, the rogue doctor who worked for Barnett Enfield NHS Mental Health Trust, called Nikki Di Taranto, then to kidnap me and put me in a mental institution to cover up the attempted assassination that's been exposed, and then to assassinate me there, which is what they did. And you will hear Nikki Di Taranto again, I bugged her meeting room. You will hear her telling his members of his team, members of her team. She knows all the members. You will hear the nurses initially telling her, again, Mr. Kingsley doesn't suffer, Ezugo doesn't suffer any mental illness. We know he doesn't suffer any mental illness. And everybody's been raising this issue. And you will hear her confirming that she knew that I suffer no mental illness. But I was campaigning against Brian Leveson. And my campaigning, my exposing what he did was very damaging to him. So they have to keep me there. And they went and write extremely malicious and libelous false report. As she confirmed, you will hear her in her own words. That's why she has to write this malicious and totally fake misdiagnosis of a mental illness. She knew it wasn't true. You will hear someone on that tape gasp when she said that and ask her, did you really do that? She even said that she not only wrote that she even said that I was so mentally ill that I lack capacity, that I have to have someone to look after me 24 hours. I was a businessman who ran international businesses. I had factories that manufacture computer parts, furniture, toys, neon lights. I was involved in motor trading in Japan. I lost over 200 vehicles as a result of them kidnapping me and holding me hostage in prison and mental hospital. I'm someone who's been running very complicated businesses, and I started running business from a very young age. And not only that, they know there is absolutely nothing wrong with me, as everybody told them, and they knew that. You will hear her. I urge you, please, to listen to the transcripts, to read the transcripts, to listen to the recordings. You will hear her confirm that she knows that I suffer no mental illness. But in order to keep me in a mental hospital, that's why they are writing this report. You will hear the other rogue doctor, Tatiana Luhakova, confirming she knows, not just once, in many of her meetings, every meetings. Kingsley we know he doesn't have any mental illness, but we have to keep him here, this she said. Because if they let me out, I will expose what happened to me. And as she said, if the public hear what happened to me, that it will completely destroy the trust. He said, if the public hear what happened to me, that they will be facing prosecutions. Because they knew they were committing a very serious criminal act. They knew that. And you can't commit such an act and expect to walk free. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to hold these people accountable. And we have the evidence to do that. So and the reason why we have to hold them accountable is if you were to let these people get away with it, they will do it again. You see, my children survived the attempt to murder them by the abusers. Next time Brian Leveson and his other vile criminals involved in these crimes, they're going to kill the children they abuse. My wife survived the attempted murder on her. Next time, Brian Leveson, so-called Mr. Justice Foskett, the Commissioner of Police, the senior lawyers of at Ministry of Justice, they're going to ensure that they leave no witnesses. They're going to kill their next victim. And they are rogue doctors. I survived what most people would not survive. If I had a weak heart, I would have died the first time they injected me these poisonous substances. But they injected it to me again and again and again to cause me muscle paralysis, to cause me heart attack. They want my heart to fail. That's assassination they were trying to accomplish. And after it didn't work, and you will hear nurses raising alarm as to what was going on. They know how heart attack works and the pain that associates with it. And they want to help me, but they were told to ignore me. Each time they injected me with this poison to cause me heart attack, they dumped me in solitary and left me alone to die. Just watching me on the CCTV. As you will hear, all these things were recorded. They were doing all these things before the CCTV, under the watchful eye of the CCTV, because they never expected that I would ever survive and come out and tell you what happened to me. They expected that they would get away with it. They would murder me and get away with absolute impunity, because the third most senior judge is going to cover it all up. But this third most senior judge, Brian Leveson, is also the head of this criminal organization. And he has to also pay the penalty, just like these rogue doctors. And I'm not forgetting the managing director, Stephen Cook, and the CEO, Ginger Candola, of the Barnett, Enfield, and Haringey Mental Health, NHS Mental Health Trust, because they are all part of this criminal conspiracy. Because you will hear that when Dr. Katan, before they turned him rogue, when he found out that I have absolutely no mental illness, and he found out that the people who brought me to the mental institution knew that I suffer absolutely no mental illness, he was minded immediately to get me out of there. And the reason why he couldn't do that immediately, discharge immediately, was because they've sold all my properties. They sold my homes and my properties. I have nowhere else to go. So he couldn't discharge me on the street. So he asked a member of his team called Rajan Mistry, to contact the council to find me a normal accommodation to discharge me. But immediately, they stopped him from doing so. And he told me everything was recorded. Brian Leveson, as they confirmed, sent them a lot of files. They confirmed were all manufactured, completely, absolutely libelous, and pressured them. Not only Brian Leveson, the Commissioner of Police, Cressida Dick, the senior lawyers of Ministry of Justice, and their other rogue doctors who has been involved in my unlawful, in kidnapping me and attempted to assassinate me. Nikki Di Taranto, Brian Leveson's friend, and the Tatiana Luakova. All of them forced him not to discharge me. They forced him to turn rogue. That he has already stopped that malicious substances that was causing me heart attack. He has stopped it. They told him to reintroduce it again. And not only to reintroduce it, but to double it, to kill me quicker. And he did. And he's told me directly, and you can hear it, that it is not him that's keeping me here. And suddenly he stopped talking to me. The man that used to talk to me all the time, he stopped talking to me. He is now a tool to assassinate me. And he did exactly what they told him to do. He tried to assassinate me. And not only to do it, but to do it quicker. That's what I went through. But still, my heart pulled through and I came out. So letting them get away with this is not an option. And we cannot allow them to get away with it. We cannot allow them to do this again, and the next time they will ensure there could be no witnesses. So before I start this, I continue with this second part of the video. I want to introduce, just in case you have not watched the first video, of my heart. You will see my cap. In case you can't see it clearly on the video, what is written on the cap says, no judge is above law, and then it says hashtag arrest Brian Leveson. We have this hashtag on all the other most vile criminals, so-called judges as well, including the so-called Mr. Justice Foskett. We have hashtag arrest Mr. Justice Foskett. We have hashtag arrest Peter Openshaw and the other most violent and most vicious and criminals, so-called judges and the so-called police officers and government lawyers involved in this crime. On my T-shirt, you will see one of our profile at Kingsley Ezugo. We also have the profile for Justice for Ezugo family, and Justice for Ezugo children is at Ezugo children on Twitter, at EZEUGO children, at Ezugo children. And then on that, next to it, I have the names of my 3 children, Uche Chiba, Master Uche Chiba, Master Narita Billion, and Princess Adora. And then at the bottom of it, it says Justice for Ezugo children. I hope you can see that clearly. So please, ladies and gentlemen, help us raise awareness about this campaign, and please share the post widely, because we need the numbers. We want you, please, to send a resounding message that this sort of crimes are not acceptable by people in a powerful position, especially judges. Judges are supposed to act with the highest level of integrity and discipline. Judges are not supposed to break the law, nor does the law enforcement agencies. They're supposed to abide by the law, because otherwise, what's the point of having the law? You can't have one law for the public and another law for the lawmakers. It doesn't work that way. No civilized society will permit or allow a judge involved in such criminal conspiracy of such grave crimes to continue as judges. But at Judiciary UK, they not only allow it, they condone it, they accept it, they cover it up, they promote these most vile judges. That's not acceptable in 2024. So this campaign seeks changes to ensure that the Judiciary UK reforms itself, is reformed. You, the public, must force them to reform. If you don't, they will not change it. When you read about this case, you will appreciate why a senior judge, an appellant judge, like Lord Justice Ward, say, reading about this case filled me with horror. A case he referred to as a horrid case. And a case he said that this is a case that the establishment cannot win. He said that the evidence in this case will cause considerable damage to the establishment. And you will also find from the evidence, that was also what the commissioner's own lawyers, Stephen Morley, and another counsel, Judge Thomas. They already say these things on record in courts before various judges that they are troubled. Their hearts are shaking. The commission is shaking about the evidence in this case being made public. That's why they went as far as trying to assassinate me, because I didn't want money. If you can see when you watch part 1, and when you go to the evidence, you look at the claim form in the bundle, tab CB7, page 1. You will see the claim form for claim HQ07X 01650. I asked for only injunction and zero damage, zero in financial damages. I've never asked for a penny in damages, despite having lost colossal amount of money to my businesses, and my family having lost colossal amount of money as a result of these 3-decade-long crimes. I asked only injunction to keep my family safe, because I simply cannot afford to lose my family. I can't afford to lose my children. All I wanted is to keep them safe. And secondly, to ensure that those involved in these crimes are brought to justice. That was all I was asking for. But I didn't want to settle out of court. That's what they wanted. And I have 8 letters from the Commissioner of Police asking me to do just that. And they even went and appointed a mediator called Mr. Michael Kalipatis, QC, to be the mediator, because they are desperate not to hear this evidence in the public domain. But if I was to do that, ladies and gentlemen, I wouldn't be able to change anything that would benefit the members of the public. I would be allowing them to get away literally with murder, with child abuse. I wouldn't be a man to do that. So I risk my life to ensure that they are held accountable, to ensure that other members of the public, other children are not abused and they attempted to murder them or ended up murdering them as they did with my own children. So I want you to support me on this. I'm speaking to you from the heart. I'm speaking honestly, as I always do. I don't know how to do anything else but to be honest. I'm not a politician, although I am a law graduate and have a considerable amount of experience in civil and criminal practices and have carried out pro bono work for 13 years, but I'm not a politician. And I've never lied when I don't do politicking when I'm dealing with facts, because I always deal with facts. And this is what frightens the hell out of my opponents and Brian Leveson, because it's the evidence that they cannot handle. So the only thing they could do is engage in cover-up and assassination. But you can't let them do that. You can't let them do that. If this is happening in North Korea, we will be condemning it. If this is happening in Iran, we will be condemning it. If this is happening in Russia, we will be condemning it. If the Taliban are doing this, we will be condemning it. And rightly so. So why is it okay that it's happening in the UK of all places? Why would we allow the third most senior judge, formerly Brian Leveson, and the current president of the King's Bench, Victoria Sharp, to continue on a criminal conspiracy and the cover-up in the abduction, the sexual abuse, and attempted murder of my children, or any children for that matter, or the mother of my wife, or any other woman for that matter? Why would we allow the third most senior judge to engage in kidnapping me, holding me hostage for 4 long years, subjected me to most extreme torture and inhumane treatment, and repeatedly attempted to assassinate me through their rogue doctors and soliciting to assassinate me in prison. How then could you say that this is a civilized society if you allow that to happen? So please help me do something about it. Help me share this video. Share this video to the Chief Justice. You will see all these senior judges, the most senior judges, you will see their email address, direct email address. When you go to the Google link on our profile, you will see my legal correspondence there. Please click on that. I think it's the Facebook. Sorry, it might be actually the Facebook. Is it Facebook? Oh, no, it says Google link. It says Google link. If you click on the Google link, you check the index, and you should see the judicial correspondence, and you can see my emails to the Prime Minister, to the Chief Justice. You will see my email to the presidents of the King's Bench, the Court of Appeal, Civil Division, and the Vice President. You will see all their email. Share it to the Judiciary UK and share it directly to these judges and ask them what the hell is going on. Share it to the National Crimes Agency on Twitter and also their website and ask them what the hell is going on. Ask the CPS and the Director of Public Prosecution what the hell is going on. Why have they not arrested these individuals involved in these crimes? I have sent them the tons of evidence. It's not that they don't know. I haven't just sent them a letter, no. I sent them the whole bundle of the evidence so they can see and read and they know what's happening. I have sent them message at least 8 times. Write to this so-called MP, David Pinto Doncheski in Hendon. Ask him what the hell is going on. Why has he not raised this case in the House of Commons and stopped the cover-up? Why have all these people aligned themselves to cover up the abuses of my children who attempted to murder my son? Why have they all aligned to the most vile criminals who attempted to murder my wife, who attempted to assassinate me? People who committed hundreds of crimes known to them. They have the evidence. And they knew what every senior and appellant judge who have sat in this case said about this case. And the need that the public, these judges say, must hear this case. Why have they ensured for 17 long years that the public does not hear this case? Why do they want these vile criminals to get away? Because they are their friends. How can a prime minister engage in such practice? Because he's connected. How can the prime minister, Keir Starmer, not talk about this case in public? Why hasn't he done anything to say, raise the issue that he's alarmed by the evidence in this case? Because he's connected to these criminals, Brian Leveson and others involved in these crimes. So how can our Prime Minister your Prime Minister engage in a conspiracy? Because that's what it is. If he's covering up these crimes, the law says he's part of the crime, a criminal. He's a part in the crime. He knows better than that. He was a former DPP. He's a senior government lawyer. He knows how the law of joint enterprise operates. The law says if one of them is guilty, all of them are guilty. The law says if one of them was engaged in any crime, you are all guilty of all the crimes. That's what the law says. He understands this more than anybody else. He was the government chief enforcement officer as the DPP. with responsibility to prosecute criminals. The National Crime Agency understand this. They can see the organized nature of this crime. This is a criminal conspiracy. They can see it's a very colossal and unprecedented case. They knew they have a duty to be involved, not just the CPS. Ask them what the hell is going on. Put them to shame so they understand their duty to act. Because apparently they need that. So as I was saying, and you can be witnesses to this, these crimes didn't happen in North Korea. It didn't happen in Russia. The Taliban didn't do this, nor did Iran. It happened here in the United Kingdom. It happened also in this self-proclaimed seat of elevated justice at the Royal Court of Justice. That's where I was kidnapped on the 19th of December 2018 when I arrived to prosecute my claim, the application for injunction against the Ministry of Justice, in my claim against them, which I have won. All that is needed is simply to seal the order. But they knew, they simply used the opportunity, turn it into something else, and kidnap me. Leveson used the so-called Mr. Justice Openshaw to conduct an utterly abusive process as a ruse to get me into prison. And when you hear what Openshaw said on record on that day, he knew that Leveson and First Gate Gang were planning to assassinate me in prison. He never expected that I would come out. Because he was afraid that if I come out, he said that I would be campaigning against him for his involvement. And we know now that he was involved. He knew that they were going to assassinate me, and he allowed himself to be used as a platform to get me there for them to assassinate me. So these are matters of public record. We know what's happening because I have the evidence. The Prime Minister, the Chief Justice, the DPP, the National Crimes Agency, the CPS, all the law enforcement organization and personnel knows what happened. They know who these crimes were committed. They know who committed these crimes. Why have they not arrested them? Is it because when a black man is raising issue that is of considerable public importance, that the institution has a way to ensure that he is never going to be heard? Because this is not only because of the evidence being extremely damaging, as every lawyer who has been involved in this case have advised, there is the underlying institutional racism as the people, these so-called judges who are shielding Brian Leveson, who are shielding these other vile criminals involved in these crimes, are thinking, why would they allow a black man to bring a case as considerable and as important as this? This is what lawyers who have been involved in this case has observed. So a black man is not allowed to prosecute the most vile criminals who abuse his children. A black man is not allowed to prosecute the most vile criminals who attempted to murder his children and his wife. The vile criminals who held him hostage, tortured him, and attempted to assassinate him. A black man is not allowed to do that. And we are in 2024 in Britain. The public, I know, you don't think that. Majority of the rational members of the majority of the public are rational people. And they want to see people who committed such crimes be held accountable. I know you wouldn't stand up for this. And I want you to really stand up and make yourself be counted by sharing this video widely, by asking the questions, and also ask the press. Ask the press, because this is also very pivotal. Why haven't the press raised this case? I'm not anonymous. The press also have the evidence, and you will see also yourself from the evidence that you're about to read on our profile. Two of the national press, members of the press network, have already investigated everything that they've received from me and confirmed through their experts, their medical experts and their lawyers, that these are facts. These are evidence-based facts. All these things happened. And the people that I say that did this were actually involved in these crimes. And they told me that they were preparing to break this case to the public. Because, of course, they understood the importance nature of this case, the seriousness of this case, and the need for the public to hear it. And then suddenly, I haven't heard anything from them. So please ask the press, what happened? You will see press will go sometime and cover stories where people are anonymous and raise it. Some of them turns out to be true, some of them turns out not to be true. But they make all the effort to cover it. But this is a case where I'm not anonymous. And I'm not saying take my word for it. You have the evidence and mountains of it. And this is extremely serious crime. You can see when you read about this case that there is no other case that could be more of public importance than this case. There's no other case that raises issue of considerable importance than this case. And there is no case that is more urgent for the public to know and act upon than this case. And there is also no other case like this case in terms of this, that this is type, the events, and the scale, and the unprecedented nature of it. Because this is a case of 3 long decades of criminal conspiracy involving the Judiciary UK, the Ministry of Justice, and the Metropolitan Police and their proxies. A case that have resulted in hundreds of crimes, serious and abominable crimes, that nobody, you wouldn't expect someone in a position of a judge, police officers, senior government lawyers, in charge with law enforcement to be engaging in. And this is what Lord Justice Ward, the good judge, Lord Justice Ward, was very much concerned about when he learned about this case. And at that time, he was dealing with the evidence of there being hundreds of police officers involved in this criminal conspiracy, and how long it has lasted at the time for over 20 years in 2010 when he dealt with this case during my successful appeal on the 9th of June 2010. And that appeal, of course, arose out of an attempt by a rogue judge, the so-called Mr. Justice Tracy, when he attempted to obstruct justice and stifle the case through the back door, because the commissioner's counsel, Judge Thomas, told him that the evidence in this case is too damaging and too embarrassing to the commissioner, that they know they cannot win, and it's going to be very damaging to the commissioner. So he tried to let them out of the hook. This is what some crooked judges are doing under the umbrella of Judiciary UK. And if you complain about them, they cover them up. But I was lucky because I came before a good judge in the Court of Appeal. I came before 2 good judges, Lord Justice Ward and Lord Justice Pitchford. And if you were hear the recording of of that, after the hearing on the 9th of June 2010, Lord Justice Pitchford also noted the unprecedented nature of the injunctions that I have already obtained against the Commissioner of Police then. And he found that for judges to impose such injunction, that they must have found that this is an unprecedented case requiring imposition of such unprecedented injunction against the Commissioner of Police. So we have discussed the knowledge of all the law enforcement agency of these crimes and those who committed it. We know that the Prime Minister, both the former Prime Minister and the current Prime Minister, the former Prime